Navigating the labyrinth, recognizing and responding to destructive family dynamics. Have you ever felt adrift in a sea of familiar faces, the cacophony of family gatherings a stark contrast to the profound loneliness echoing within your soul? The forced smiles, the practiced pleasantries, the weight of unspoken expectations, all contribute to a suffocating sense of disconnect, a nagging feeling that something is profoundly amiss. We are raised on the idyllic notion that family is an inviolable sanctuary, a bedrock of unconditional love and unwavering support. But what happens when this foundational belief becomes a gilded cage, trapping us in cycles of pain and perpetuating patterns of emotional harm? What if the very individuals who should be our staunchest allies are, in fact, the architects of our deepest insecurities? Seneca, the Roman Stoic philosopher, astutely observed that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. While this holds true in many aspects of life, the suffering inflicted by those closest to us transcends mere imagination. It is visceral, tangible, and deeply scarring. The wounds inflicted by family members often cut deeper than any others, precisely because they violate our fundamental expectations of trust, loyalty, and unconditional acceptance. It's tempting to rationalize their behavior, to dismiss their hurtful words as mere quirks of personality, or to attribute their actions to their own difficult past. We tell ourselves, that's just how they are, or, maybe it's my fault for being too sensitive. But deep down, a persistent voice whispers a different truth. Some individuals, even those bound to us by blood, are not merely difficult, they are actively destructive. They manipulate, deceive, and skillfully wear the mask of kindness while subtly eroding our self-worth and chipping away at our sense of identity. This isn't about trivial disagreements or the inevitable squabbles that arise in any family. This is about something far more sinister, a pattern of behavior designed to exert control, to inflict emotional pain, and to undermine our ability to thrive. The Stoics, with their emphasis on reason, self-control, and virtue, offer a powerful framework for navigating these treacherous waters. They urge us to focus on what we can control, our thoughts, our actions, and our responses, and to accept with equanimity what lies beyond our influence. One of the most crucial aspects of Stoicism in this context is the cultivation of awareness. We must train ourselves to recognize the warning signs of destructive behavior, to see through the manipulative tactics, and to resist the urge to rationalize or excuse the inexcusable. If we fail to recognize these signs, we risk being ensnared in a web of guilt, obligation, and emotional harm, perpetuating the cycle of pain and sacrificing our own well-being in the process. Therefore, it is imperative that we develop the ability to identify these patterns, not to sow seeds of fear or resentment, but to gain clarity and reclaim our power. For once we recognize the truth, however painful it may be, we can begin to dismantle the destructive dynamics and build healthier, more fulfilling relationships. Let us embark on an exploration of 6 critical warning signs that a family member is not merely toxic, but truly dangerous to our emotional and psychological well-being. These signs are not intended to be used as diagnostic tools or to label individuals, but rather as beacons of awareness, guiding us toward a deeper understanding of the dynamics at play and empowering us to make informed choices about our own safety and well-being. 1. The malevolent delight, finding pleasure in your pain. There is perhaps no greater betrayal than the realization that someone who shares your blood, someone who is supposed to be a source of unwavering support and unconditional love, actually derives pleasure from your suffering. Family is meant to be a refuge, a safe haven where we can seek solace and understanding in times of hardship. But what happens when a family member not only fails to lift you up but actively delights in watching you fall? This realization is profoundly unsettling, even devastating, shattering our preconceived notions of family and forcing us to confront a painful truth about the people we thought we knew. Ignoring this truth, however, will not make it disappear. The Stoics remind us to see things as they are, not as we wish them to be. And the truth, however difficult to accept, is that some individuals, even those closest to us, thrive on our misery. This isn't about offering constructive criticism or pointing out areas where we can improve. This is about a deep-seated need to see us fail, to witness our pain, and to derive a sense of validation or superiority from our struggles. At first, it's easy to explain away their behavior. We tell ourselves they don't mean to hurt us, that they're just being blunt, or that they express love in a tough way. We might even try to rationalize their actions by attributing them to their own insecurities or unresolved traumas. But over time, a disturbing pattern emerges, one that cannot be easily dismissed. They don't just fail to support us, they seem to actively enjoy our struggles. When we face hardship, whether it's a breakup, a job loss, or a personal failure, instead of offering a comforting word or a helping hand, they mock us, they say, "I told you so," or they smirk as if our pain validates something within them. It's not just their words, but their energy. We can feel their satisfaction when we are at our lowest, a subtle but unmistakable sense of triumph in our misfortune. Their eyes might gleam with a perverse sense of satisfaction, or their voice might take on a subtly mocking tone. Sometimes, the cruelty isn't loud or overt, it's quiet, passive, insidious. When we need them the most, they disappear. They dismiss our suffering, telling us it's not a big deal, or they shift the conversation to themselves, hijacking our pain and turning it into an opportunity to talk about their own problems. This is not care, it's control. Their indifference is a weapon, designed to make us feel small, unworthy of sympathy, and utterly alone in our suffering. The more we suffer, the more powerful they feel. They revel in our vulnerability, using our pain to reinforce their own sense of superiority. They might subtly remind us of past failures, or they might express skepticism about our ability to overcome our current challenges. Their goal is to keep us feeling weak and dependent, to prevent us from rising above our circumstances and threatening their position of power. This behavior is deeply rooted in their own insecurities and unresolved issues. They may be projecting their own feelings of inadequacy onto us, or they may be seeking to validate their own choices by seeing us struggle. Whatever the underlying cause, their behavior is a clear indication of a toxic and destructive dynamic. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, once wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." This profound statement offers a powerful antidote to the bitterness and resentment that can arise when someone enjoys our pain. If a family member derives pleasure from our suffering, we must not allow ourselves to become bitter or vengeful. Instead, we must cultivate awareness, understand that their behavior is a reflection of them, not us, and act accordingly. We are not weak for feeling hurt by their actions, but we must not allow that hurt to define us. We must recognize the truth about their behavior and refuse to allow it to control our emotions or dictate our actions. The first step is to set clear and firm boundaries. We must refuse to engage in their games, to be drawn into their cycles of negativity, or to allow them to dictate our emotional state. We can choose to limit our contact with them, to avoid sharing vulnerable information, or to simply disengage from their attempts to provoke us. The key is to reclaim our power and to refuse to allow them to control our emotions or our sense of self-worth. We deserve to be surrounded by those who uplift us, who celebrate our successes, and who offer support and understanding in times of hardship. We should not waste our energy seeking validation from someone who enjoys our downfall. Instead, we should walk away, not in anger or resentment, but in clarity and self-respect. Because the moment we stop allowing them to control our emotions, we win. We reclaim our power, our autonomy, and our right to live a life free from their negativity and manipulation. This is not an easy process, but it is a necessary one for our own well-being. It requires courage, self-awareness, and a willingness to prioritize our own needs above the expectations of others. But the rewards are immeasurable: a sense of inner peace, a renewed sense of self-worth, and the freedom to build relationships based on genuine love, respect, and mutual support. In navigating this challenging situation, it's crucial to remember that their behavior is not a reflection of our worth. Their inability to offer support or their tendency to find pleasure in our pain stems from their own internal struggles. By recognizing this, we can detach ourselves from their negativity and prevent it from poisoning our own sense of self. Furthermore, seeking support from trusted friends, therapists, or support groups can provide valuable tools and perspectives for coping with this difficult dynamic. These external sources of support can help us process our emotions, develop healthy coping mechanisms, and reinforce our sense of self-worth. Ultimately, the goal is to create a life where we are surrounded by individuals who genuinely care about our well-being and who uplift us to become our best selves. By setting boundaries, reclaiming our power, and focusing on our own growth, we can navigate the challenges of a family member who enjoys our pain and create a life filled with joy, peace, and authentic connection. Remember, choosing to prioritize your own well-being is not selfish, it is an act of self-preservation. You deserve to be surrounded by love and support, and you have the power to create that reality for yourself. 2. The relentless rivalry, competing instead of supporting. Family should be a foundation, a solid and unwavering base upon which we build our lives. It should be a place where we are unconditionally supported, encouraged to pursue our dreams, and celebrated for our achievements. Yet, tragically, some family members see us not as loved ones, but as rivals, as obstacles to their own success or as threats to their sense of self-worth. Every achievement we share is not met with joy and pride, but with comparison, criticism, or subtle attempts to undermine our accomplishments. Instead of standing beside us, cheering us on, they position themselves ahead, constantly striving to outdo us and to diminish our successes. And the worst part is that this competition is often disguised as harmless playful teasing or even concern, making it difficult to identify and even harder to confront. But beneath the surface, lurking beneath the veneer of familial affection, lies something darker: jealousy, insecurity, and an unspoken need to see us beneath them. This person is incapable of genuinely celebrating our victories without finding a way to make themselves look superior. They cannot bear the thought of us surpassing them, and they will go to great lengths to maintain their perceived dominance. When we land a promotion, they immediately mention how much higher their salary is, or they subtly imply that our success was due to luck or favoritism rather than hard work and talent. If we accomplish a personal goal, such as running a marathon or learning a new language, they remind us that they've done something bigger, something more impressive, or something that required even more effort. Even in small, everyday moments, they turn conversations into a game of one-upmanship, constantly seeking to prove their superiority and to diminish our accomplishments. We might say, "I finally finished that project I was working on," and they'll respond with, "Oh, that's nice. I finished mine weeks ago, and it was much more complex." No matter what we achieve, they will find a way to minimize it, to downplay its significance, or to subtly suggest that it wasn't as impressive as it seemed. Their need to compete is insatiable, and they will seize any opportunity to elevate themselves at our expense. The Stoics teach us that external validation, whether praise or comparison, should not define our sense of worth. They emphasize the importance of focusing on our own internal values, on striving to live virtuously, and on finding satisfaction in our own progress, regardless of what others may think or say. But in a family dynamic, this is often difficult to achieve. We expect support and encouragement from our loved ones, and when we are instead met with competition and criticism, it can be deeply disheartening and damaging to our self-esteem. We find ourselves subtly undermined, our achievements diminished, and our sense of self-worth constantly challenged. The competition isn't always obvious or overt. Sometimes it's a backhanded comment, like, "Well, you had an easier path than I did," or "Not everyone is lucky enough to have your advantages." These words may seem harmless on the surface, but over time they plant seeds of doubt and insecurity in our minds. We start questioning whether our success is real, whether we truly earned it, or whether we even deserve to feel proud. We begin to internalize their negativity, and our own self-confidence begins to erode. And then there are those who go beyond words, who actively seek to sabotage our success. If they sense that we're growing, evolving, or stepping into a new level of achievement, they may actively try to hold us back, to undermine our efforts, and to prevent us from reaching our full potential. They'll dismiss our ambitions, make us second-guess ourselves, or even sabotage our progress behind our backs. They might spread rumors about us, criticize our work to others, or create obstacles that make it more difficult for us to succeed. Their goal is to keep us in our place, to prevent us from surpassing them, and to maintain their position of perceived dominance. A Stoic understands that envy is the mark of an unfulfilled soul, one that measures its own worth only in comparison to others. Their competition with us is not about us, it's about them, about their own insecurities, and about their own need to feel superior. But here is our freedom: we do not have to play their game. We do not have to engage in their constant comparisons, to be drawn into their cycles of competition, or to allow their negativity to affect our self-worth. Epictetus, another prominent Stoic philosopher, said, "If someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation." We owe them no reaction, no validation, and certainly no participation in their unspoken race. We are not in competition with anyone but the person we were yesterday. Our focus should be on our own growth, on our own progress, and on our own internal values. We should not allow ourselves to be distracted by their attempts to undermine us, or to be drawn into their petty rivalries. So, we must step away, not with resentment or anger, but with clarity and self-assurance. We must recognize that their behavior is a reflection of their own insecurities, not a reflection of our worth. True family support is not measured in comparisons, but in shared joy, in mutual encouragement, and in unconditional love. We should surround ourselves with those who celebrate with us, who are genuinely happy for our successes, and who support us in pursuing our dreams. We should distance ourselves from those who feel threatened by our growth, who constantly try to undermine us, and who cannot bear to see us succeed. Let them compete with their own insecurities while we walk our path unshaken and unbothered, focused on our own goals and confident in our own abilities. The key is to cultivate a strong sense of self-worth that is not dependent on external validation. We must learn to value ourselves for who we are, not for what we achieve. We must find satisfaction in our own progress, regardless of what others may think or say. And we must surround ourselves with people who genuinely care about us and who support our growth, not those who try to hold us back or undermine our success. By doing so, we can create a life filled with joy, purpose, and authentic connection, free from the toxic influence of those who seek to compete rather than support. Remember, you are not defined by their insecurities. Your worth is inherent, and your success is a testament to your own hard work and dedication. Let their competition fuel your own determination, and let their negativity serve as a reminder to surround yourself with those who genuinely celebrate your achievements. 3. The emotional puppet master, constantly manipulating your emotions. Few things cut deeper than emotional manipulation from a family member. Family should be a place of safety, a sanctuary where our emotions are heard, understood, and validated. It should be a place where we can be vulnerable, where we can express our feelings without fear of judgment or reprisal. But when someone close to us, someone who is supposed to love and support us, instead twists our feelings for their own gain, it feels like a betrayal of the deepest kind, a violation of the most sacred trust. The Stoics teach us to master our emotions, to cultivate inner peace, and to remain unfazed by external circumstances. But how do we stay grounded? How do we maintain our emotional equilibrium when someone is constantly pulling the strings, manipulating our feelings, and trying to control our emotional state? Manipulation isn't always obvious. It doesn't always come in the form of yelling, threats, or dramatic confrontations. More often, it's subtle, insidious, creeping into our minds in ways that make us question ourselves, our perceptions, and our sanity. It's a slow erosion of our self-worth, a gradual undermining of our confidence, and a constant feeling of being off balance and unsure of ourselves. Have you ever felt like no matter what you say or do, it's never right? Like you're always walking on eggshells, constantly on edge, waiting for their mood to shift, never knowing if today will bring kindness or cold detachment. That's the mark of a manipulator, someone who deliberately keeps you emotionally off balance, making sure you are too preoccupied with their reactions to trust your own feelings. One of their most common tools is guilt tripping. You open up about your struggles, hoping for support, for a listening ear, or for a comforting word. But instead of empathy, instead of understanding, you get a reminder of everything they've done for you, of all the sacrifices they've made, and of how ungrateful you are for not appreciating their efforts. Suddenly, your pain becomes a burden, and you feel selfish for even seeking comfort. You're made to believe that their love is conditional, that it's something you must constantly earn by suppressing your own needs, by catering to their every whim, and by never daring to express your own feelings or desires. But love, true love, is not a transaction. It's not a quid pro quo, a tit-for-tat exchange of favors. It's unconditional, freely given, and based on mutual respect and understanding. Then there's gaslighting, a more insidious and damaging form of control. You confront them about a hurtful comment they made, about a broken promise, or about a pattern of disrespectful behavior. And instead of owning up to it, instead of apologizing or taking responsibility for their actions, they twist the story, they deny reality, and they make you question your own sanity. I never said that, they claim, even though you clearly remember them saying it. You're overreacting, they insist, even though their words were clearly hurtful and demeaning. You're too sensitive, they accuse, even though their behavior was clearly inappropriate and disrespectful. Over time, this constant rewriting of reality, this persistent denial of your own experiences, makes you question your own memories, your own emotions, and your own perceptions. You start doubting yourself, wondering if you're imagining things, if the problem is really you, and if you're just being too difficult or demanding. And that is exactly what they want: control over your perception, control over how you feel, and ultimately, control over you. Another tactic is emotional unpredictability. One day they shower you with warmth and affection, making you feel like you're the most important person in the world. The next day they're cold and distant, withholding their affection, and making you feel like you've done something wrong, even though you have no idea what it could be. This inconsistency keeps you anxious, always trying to earn back their approval, always wondering what you did wrong, and always fearing their disapproval. The reality is you did nothing wrong. Their hot and cold behavior is not a reflection of your worth, it's a tactic to keep you emotionally dependent on them, to keep you constantly seeking their approval, and to prevent you from ever feeling secure in their love. And perhaps the most ruthless form of manipulation is weaponizing your vulnerabilities. You trusted them with your fears, your past mistakes, your deepest insecurities, sharing your innermost thoughts and feelings with the belief that they would be safe and protected. Now they use those very things against you, bringing them up to shame you, to silence you, to make sure you never feel strong enough to stand up to them. They exploit your vulnerabilities to keep you in your place, to prevent you from challenging their authority, and to maintain their control over you. A loving family member holds your pain with care, offering comfort, support, and understanding. A manipulative one sharpens it into a blade, using it to inflict further pain and to keep you feeling weak and vulnerable. Marcus Aurelius said, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." If someone is constantly making you feel guilty, anxious, or unworthy, your mind begins to absorb those emotions as truth. You start believing that you are somehow flawed, that you are not good enough, and that you deserve to be treated poorly. But they are not the truth. You are not obligated to accept emotional abuse simply because it comes from family. You are not responsible for carrying the weight of their insecurities, their unresolved traumas, or their need to control others. The first step to freedom is awareness. If a family member manipulates your emotions, recognize it for what it is: control, not love. Acknowledge the pattern of behavior, identify the tactics they use, and understand that their actions are not a reflection of your worth. Set boundaries. Establish clear limits on what you will and will not accept. Refuse to engage in their games, to be drawn into their cycles of negativity, or to allow them to dictate your emotional state. Reclaim your inner peace. Focus on your own well-being, prioritize your own needs, and cultivate a sense of self-worth that is not dependent on their approval. You do not have to play their game. You have the power to choose clarity over confusion, strength over submission, and in doing so, you take back something they never wanted you to have, your own emotional freedom. This is not an easy process. It requires courage, self-awareness, and a willingness to challenge deeply ingrained patterns of behavior. But it is a necessary one for your own well-being. You deserve to be treated with respect, kindness, and compassion, and you have the power to create a life where you are surrounded by individuals who genuinely care about you and who support your emotional growth. Remember, you are not responsible for their behavior. Their manipulation is a reflection of their own internal struggles, not a reflection of your worth. By setting boundaries, reclaiming your power, and focusing on your own well-being, you can break free from the cycle of emotional manipulation and create a life filled with joy, peace, and authentic connection. 4. The accountability evader, never taking responsibility for their actions. A person who refuses to take responsibility for their actions creates an exhausting cycle, one where blame is shifted, truth is distorted, and resolution is impossible. It's a constant uphill battle, a never-ending struggle to hold them accountable for their behavior and to get them to acknowledge the harm they've caused. At first, you might make excuses for them. Maybe they don't realize what they're doing. Maybe they had a difficult past that has shaped their behavior. Maybe if you're patient and understanding, they'll eventually change. But over time, the pattern becomes clear: they never acknowledge their wrongs. Instead, they dodge accountability, rewrite history, and somehow always manage to make you the problem. It's as if they have an instinctive defense mechanism against admitting fault, a deep-seated fear of being held responsible for their actions. If they say something cruel and you call them out, they won't apologize. Instead, they'll dismiss your feelings, claiming that you're too sensitive, that you're taking things too personally, or that that's not what they meant. Notice how the focus shifts. It's no longer about their harmful words, but about your reaction to them. Suddenly, you find yourself defending your emotions instead of addressing their behavior. This is no accident, it's a deliberate tactic to deflect blame and to avoid taking responsibility for their actions. The Stoics teach us to focus only on what we can control, and one thing you cannot control is forcing accountability onto someone who refuses to take it. No matter how patiently you explain, how much evidence you provide, or how reasonably you approach the situation, they will twist the narrative, they will blame circumstances, they will blame other people, or they will even blame you. Anything to avoid looking inward, to avoid confronting their own flaws, and to avoid admitting that they were wrong. And over time, this begins to wear you down. You start doubting yourself, wondering if you're overreacting, if you're being unfair, or if you're somehow contributing to the problem. You question your own perceptions, your own memories, and your own sense of reality. Think back to past disagreements with this person. Have they ever truly owned their mistakes? Have they ever sincerely apologized for their actions? Or do they always find a way to justify, excuse, or outright deny their wrongdoing? Some will even take it further, making you question reality itself. They pretend the issue never happened, act like you imagined the whole thing, or insist you're making a big deal out of nothing. This slow erosion of truth creates an emotional imbalance, one where your pain is invalidated, your voice is drowned out, and your worth is diminished. You start feeling like you're going crazy, like you can't trust your own judgment, and like you're constantly being gaslighted by someone who is supposed to love and support you. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." In other words, don't waste your energy trying to make someone change. Focus on living by your own values, on being the best version of yourself, and on setting an example for others to follow. If a family member refuses to acknowledge their harmful actions, that is their burden to carry, not yours. You cannot force them to be accountable, and you cannot change their behavior. But here's the danger: when accountability is absent, so is growth. If they never own up to their behavior, they will never change. And if you keep hoping for a different outcome, if you keep trying to convince them to see things your way, you will only find yourself trapped in an endless cycle of frustration and emotional exhaustion. The truth is, you should never have to beg for an apology. You should never have to fight for basic respect. And you should never have to shrink yourself just to maintain peace with someone who refuses to meet you halfway. A family member who avoids responsibility is not just frustrating, they are emotionally draining. Their constant denial, their blame shifting, and their refusal to acknowledge the harm they've caused will slowly erode your mental and emotional well-being. If they never change, the burden on your mental and emotional health will only grow heavier. Setting boundaries is not an act of cruelty, it is an act of self-respect. You deserve relationships where your feelings are acknowledged, where your pain is not dismissed, and where accountability is not seen as a threat but as a path to growth and healing. If someone refuses to own their mistakes, let them sit with them alone. You have a life to live, one free from the weight of carrying responsibility for someone who refuses to carry their own. This is not about cutting them out of your life entirely, but about creating a safe and healthy distance, both physically and emotionally. It's about protecting your own well-being and refusing to allow their behavior to continue to harm you. It's about recognizing that you cannot change them, and that your energy is better spent on nurturing relationships with people who are willing to be accountable for their actions and who are committed to mutual respect and understanding. Remember, you are not responsible for their choices. You are only responsible for your own. Choose to prioritize your own well-being, set healthy boundaries, and surround yourself with people who uplift you and support your growth. By doing so, you can break free from the cycle of accountability evasion and create a life filled with honesty, integrity, and authentic connection. 5. The conditional connection, only reaching out when they want something. There is something deeply unsettling, even profoundly disheartening, about realizing that a family member only contacts you when they need something. It's a painful truth that, once seen, cannot be ignored. It shatters the illusion of unconditional love and familial support, revealing a transactional relationship where your worth is measured solely by your utility. You might go weeks, even months, without hearing from them. No messages, no check-ins, no sign that they care about your well-being or that they even remember you exist. You might wonder if they're okay, if they're going through a difficult time, or if they've simply forgotten about you. But then, suddenly, your phone rings. For a brief moment, a flicker of hope ignites within you. Maybe they finally just want to talk, to connect, to see how you've been. Maybe they've realized they've been neglecting the relationship and are ready to make amends. But as the conversation unfolds, the truth becomes clear: they need a favor, a loan, a ride, or some other form of help. They might start with a few pleasantries, a perfunctory attempt to feign interest in your life, but it quickly becomes apparent that their true motivation is to get something from you. Once they get what they want, once you've fulfilled their request, they vanish again, leaving you feeling used, not loved. You're left with a hollow feeling, a sense of emptiness and disappointment, and a growing resentment towards someone who is supposed to be a source of support and affection. At first, you may dismiss it. They must be busy, you tell yourself. Maybe they just don't realize what they're doing. Maybe they're going through a difficult time and they're just not thinking clearly. You tell yourself it's family, I should help. And yes, family should support one another. But a relationship built on one-sided expectations, a relationship where one person is constantly giving and the other is constantly taking, is not family, it's an emotional transaction. It's a parasitic relationship that drains your energy, depletes your resources, and leaves you feeling used and unappreciated. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." If every interaction with this person leaves you feeling drained, unseen, or unappreciated, then it's time to shift your perspective, to reevaluate the nature of the relationship, and to set clear boundaries to protect your own well-being. Think back to the last time you struggled, the last time you needed support. Did they reach out? Did they offer help? Or were they nowhere to be found until they needed something from you? Did they show genuine concern for your well-being, or were they only interested in what you could do for them? Imagine you've had a difficult week, maybe you're grieving, maybe you're overwhelmed with stress, or maybe you're simply feeling down and out. You hesitate to call them because deep down you know how the conversation will go. You know that they'll either be dismissive of your feelings, that they'll change the subject to their own problems, or that they'll use your vulnerability as an opportunity to ask you for something. And if you do reach out, your pain is brushed aside, your concerns are minimized, and your needs are ignored, replaced by their own requests, their own demands, and their own self-centered agenda. Weeks pass, months pass, and just as you begin to move on, just as you start to heal and rebuild your life, they call, without acknowledging your struggles, without asking how you've been, just with another request, another demand, and another expectation that you will drop everything to help them. Over time, this pattern erodes something within you. It chips away at your self-worth, it diminishes your sense of value, and it makes you question your place in their life. Do they care about me at all? You wonder. Or am I just useful to them, a convenient resource to be exploited whenever they need something? You start to wonder if your worth in their eyes is tied solely to what you can provide, to your ability to fulfill their needs, and to your willingness to sacrifice your own well-being for their benefit. The Stoics remind us that external circumstances should not dictate our inner peace. They encourage us to focus on our own internal values, on living virtuously, and on finding satisfaction in our own actions, regardless of what others may think or do. But when someone repeatedly treats you as a resource rather than a person, when they consistently prioritize their own needs over yours, and when they only reach out when they want something from you, it's hard not to feel the weight of it. It's hard not to feel used, unappreciated, and emotionally drained. But here is the truth: you are not an ATM. You are not a tool to be picked up when needed and discarded when you are no longer useful. You are not a resource to be exploited for the benefit of others. You are a human being with your own needs, your own desires, and your own inherent worth. True relationships, whether family or otherwise, are built on mutual care, on reciprocal support, and on a genuine interest in each other's well-being, not on convenience, not on exploitation, and not on one-sided expectations. If you find yourself always giving while they only take, if you consistently prioritize their needs over yours, and if you only hear from them when they want something from you, it's time to reassess the relationship, to set clear boundaries, and to protect your own emotional well-being. Setting boundaries is not an act of selfishness, it is an act of self-respect. You have the right to say no, to protect your energy, and to step away from relationships that only drain you. You have the right to prioritize your own needs, to focus on your own well-being, and to surround yourself with people who genuinely care about you. This doesn't mean you must cut them off completely, but it does mean you must recognize the imbalance, adjust your expectations, and set clear limits on what you are willing to give. It means refusing to be taken advantage of, refusing to be used as a resource, and refusing to allow them to dictate the terms of the relationship. Epictetus said, "If someone is unable to live up to your expectations, that is their choice. But you must choose whether to accept it or move on." If a family member only reaches out when they need something, it may be time for a difficult conversation, a frank and honest discussion about the nature of the relationship and the impact of their behavior on your well-being. Or perhaps it may be time for a quiet step back, a gradual distancing from the relationship, and a conscious effort to invest your energy in more fulfilling and reciprocal connections. You deserve relationships that nourish your soul, that uplift your spirit, and that leave you feeling valued, appreciated, and supported, not ones that leave you feeling empty, used, and emotionally drained. Recognizing the pattern is the first step. What you do next is entirely within your power. Choose to prioritize your own well-being, set healthy boundaries, and surround yourself with people who genuinely care about you. By doing so, you can break free from the cycle of conditional connection and create a life filled with authentic relationships based on mutual respect, genuine affection, and unconditional support. 6. The boundary breacher: they violate your boundaries. Few things are more exhausting, more frustrating, and more emotionally draining than dealing with a family member who constantly disregards your boundaries. Boundaries are not walls to shut people out, to isolate yourself from others, or to create distance in relationships. Instead, they are the framework that protects your emotional well-being, the invisible lines that define what you will and won't accept in your interactions with others. They are the guidelines that allow relationships to be built on mutual respect, on trust, and on a genuine understanding of each other's needs and limitations. But when someone repeatedly ignores them, when they push past your limits, when they disregard your requests for space or respect, it creates a toxic dynamic, one where your needs are dismissed, your feelings are invalidated, and your sense of control slowly erodes. Imagine clearly expressing your limits, articulating your needs, and setting clear boundaries on what you are willing to tolerate. Whether it's needing personal space, keeping certain topics off limits, asking for respect in how you're treated, or simply requesting a moment of peace and quiet, you have clearly communicated your boundaries to this person. Yet, time and again, they disregard them. They push, they demand, they intrude, and they dismiss your concerns as if they don't matter. Perhaps you've asked for quiet time to recharge, to de-stress, or to simply have a moment to yourself. Yet they call at all hours, they drop by unannounced, they interrupt your solitude with their constant demands and their incessant need for attention. Maybe you've drawn a line on certain discussions, topics that are triggering, sensitive, or simply unproductive. But they continuously bring them up, baiting you into arguments, provoking your emotions, and dismissing your discomfort as an overreaction. They might guilt-trip you into compliance, making you feel selfish for setting boundaries at all, implying that you are being unreasonable, ungrateful, or uncaring for prioritizing your own needs. They might use emotional blackmail, threatening to withdraw their love or support if you don't cave to their demands. Or they might simply ignore your boundaries altogether, acting as if they don't exist and continuing to engage in the behavior you have clearly asked them to stop. The Stoics teach that we cannot control others, only our response to them. We cannot force people to respect our boundaries, to acknowledge our needs, or to treat us with kindness and compassion. But we can control our own actions, our own reactions, and our own willingness to tolerate disrespect. And when someone repeatedly violates your boundaries, the real question isn't why they do it, but why you allow it to continue. Each time you let their behavior slide, each time you fail to enforce your boundaries, it reinforces their belief that your limits don't matter, that they can do whatever they want without consequence, and that your needs are less important than theirs. Over time, this dynamic drains you. It depletes your energy, it erodes your self-esteem, and it makes you question whether you're being unreasonable, demanding, or too sensitive. You start doubting yourself, wondering if you're overreacting, if you're misinterpreting their behavior, or if you're somehow responsible for their disrespect. But you're not. Your boundaries are valid. They are not arbitrary rules or selfish demands, they are essential for your emotional well-being. Their refusal to respect them is not a reflection of your worth, but of their disregard for your autonomy, their lack of empathy, and their inability to see you as a separate individual with your own needs and limitations. Epictetus reminds us, how long will you wait before you demand the best for yourself? If someone constantly ignores your needs, if they repeatedly violate your boundaries, and if they refuse to acknowledge the harm they're causing, it's time to stand firm. No one, not even family, has the right to dictate what you should tolerate, to dismiss your feelings, or to treat you with disrespect. Boundaries are an act of self-respect, a declaration that you value your own well-being and that you will not allow others to treat you in a way that is harmful or demeaning. And enforcing them is not selfish, it's necessary. It's essential for protecting your emotional health, for maintaining your sense of self-worth, and for creating healthy and fulfilling relationships. If they refuse to honor them, if they continue to push past your limits, and if they show no willingness to respect your needs, perhaps the real boundary you need to set is distance. This doesn't necessarily mean cutting them out of your life completely, but it does mean creating a safe and healthy space, both physically and emotionally, between you and them. It means limiting your contact, avoiding sensitive topics, and refusing to engage in their manipulative tactics. It means prioritizing your own well-being, setting clear limits on what you are willing to tolerate, and surrounding yourself with people who genuinely respect you and value your boundaries. Creating distance can be a difficult decision, especially when it involves family members. You may feel guilty, selfish, or afraid of the consequences. But remember, you are not responsible for their behavior. You are only responsible for your own. And if their behavior is consistently harmful and disrespectful, you have the right to protect yourself, to set boundaries, and to create a safe space for your own emotional well-being. Enforcing your boundaries may lead to conflict, disagreement, or even estrangement. But it is ultimately worth it, because it allows you to reclaim your power, to assert your autonomy, and to create a life where you are treated with respect, kindness, and compassion. Remember, you deserve to be surrounded by people who value you, who respect your boundaries, and who support your emotional growth. Don't settle for anything less. Reclaiming your peace and building healthier relationships. These 6 warning signs, the malevolent delight in your pain, the relentless rivalry, the emotional puppetry, the accountability evasion, the conditional connection, and the boundary breaching, represent critical indicators of destructive family dynamics. Recognizing them is the first, and often most difficult, step towards reclaiming your peace and building healthier relationships. It requires a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths, to challenge deeply ingrained patterns of behavior, and to prioritize your own well-being above the expectations of others. It's not about assigning blame or seeking revenge, but about gaining clarity, reclaiming your power, and creating a life where you are surrounded by people who genuinely care about you and who support your growth. It's about setting healthy boundaries, enforcing those boundaries with consistency and compassion, and creating distance from those who consistently disrespect your needs and violate your autonomy. It's about cultivating self-compassion, recognizing that you are worthy of love, respect, and kindness, and refusing to tolerate treatment that is harmful or demeaning. It's about focusing on what you can control, your thoughts, your actions, and your responses, and accepting with equanimity what lies beyond your influence. It's about embracing the Stoic principles of reason, virtue, and self-control, and using them as a guide for navigating the complexities of family relationships. And it's about remembering that you are not alone. Many people struggle with toxic family dynamics, and there are resources available to help you navigate these challenges. Seeking support from trusted friends, therapists, or support groups can provide valuable tools and perspectives for coping with difficult family relationships. These external sources of support can help you process your emotions, develop healthy coping mechanisms, and reinforce your sense of self-worth. They can also provide a safe space to share your experiences, to gain validation, and to learn from others who have faced similar challenges. Ultimately, the goal is to create a life where you are surrounded by individuals who genuinely care about your well-being and who uplift you to become your best self. By setting boundaries, reclaiming your power, and focusing on your own growth, you can navigate the challenges of destructive family dynamics and create a life filled with joy, peace, and authentic connection. Remember, choosing to prioritize your own well-being is not selfish, it is an act of self-preservation. You deserve to be surrounded by love and support, and you have the power to create that reality for yourself. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Have you seen these warning signs in someone close to you? Are you struggling to break free from a toxic family dynamic? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear to feel less alone and to find the courage to take the first step towards healing. Remember, awareness is the first step to reclaiming your peace. You are not obligated to tolerate manipulation, disrespect, or emotional harm, no matter who it comes from. Strength isn't just about endurance, it's about knowing when to walk away, when to set boundaries, and when to prioritize your own well-being. If this resonated with you, give it a like and subscribe for more insights on protecting your mind, your heart, and your inner peace. Stay strong, stay mindful, and most importantly, stay true to yourself. Until next time, take control of what you can, let go of what you can't, and always choose wisdom over chaos. Your peace is worth it.